Be me, 42, professor of gender studies at State University in California, PhD in women's studies, published author on feminist theory. Been teaching for 15 years, tenured for last 5. My course, Gender and Power in Modern Society, is very popular. Usually 80 to 100 students per semester, mostly women. The few men who take it either want easy A or are already allies. This semester is no different. 85 students enrolled. About 15 men scattered throughout the lecture hall. Most sit in back, stay quiet, just want to pass. That's fine with me. This class is really for the women anyway. 3 weeks in a semester, covering patriarchal structures, explaining how men benefit from systemic advantages, how male privilege operates invisibly in daily life, how women perform unpaid emotional and domestic labor. Standard lecture I've given dozens of times before. Students nodding along, taking notes, engaged. Then I notice one male student in third row. Mid-20s, looks older than typical undergrad. Probably military or worked before college. He's not nodding, just listening with neutral expression. Taking notes, but face is unreadable. After class, he approaches my desk. Tall, clean-cut, professional demeanor. Professor Mitchell, I'm Daniel Torres. I have some questions about today's lecture. Internally sigh. Here we go, another not all men conversation. Office hours are Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 to 4 p.m. I'd prefer to discuss complex topics there rather than after class. He nods politely. I'll come by Thursday then. Thursday afternoon, he shows up exactly at 2 p.m. Knocks on open door, waits for invitation to enter. Sits down when I gesture, very formal and respectful. So, Daniel, what questions did you have about the lecture? He pulls out notebook, flips to page with detailed notes. You stated that men benefit from systemic privilege regardless of individual circumstances, and that this privilege operates invisibly in daily life. I'm trying to understand how that applies universally. Here comes the defensive male fragility. Privilege doesn't mean your life is easy. It means you don't face certain obstacles because of your gender. That's intersectionality 101. He nods like he's considering this carefully. I understand the theoretical framework you're presenting. I'm asking about practical application to real situations. Interesting, most students don't push this thoughtfully. Give me an example of what you mean. He consults his notes again, very organized. You mentioned men don't perform emotional labor in relationships, that women bear the burden of managing household and emotions. How does that account for single fathers or widowers who perform all household and emotional labor alone? Valid question, actually, but has standard answer. Those are exceptions that prove the rule. We're discussing systemic patterns, not individual cases. The overwhelming majority of domestic labor is performed by women. He's writing this down, processing. What percentage constitutes overwhelming majority? In terms of establishing systemic pattern versus individual variation. He's asking for data unusual for undergrad. Studies show women perform 2 to 3 times more housework than men in heterosexual relationships, even when both work full-time jobs. He nods, makes note of this. And in single-parent households, what does data show? Don't have those statistics memorized. That's not really the focus of this course. We're examining gender dynamics within partnerships. He nods again, but I can tell he's not satisfied. Another question from Tuesday's lecture. You stated men benefit from higher wages due to gender discrimination. The wage gap shows systemic devaluation of women's work. Standard feminist economics, nothing controversial. Yes, women make 82 cents for every dollar men make. That's well-documented discrimination. He's still taking notes, not arguing, just listening. Is that 82 cents comparing same jobs with same experience? Or is it average earnings across all occupations? Smart question. He's done some research. It's more complex than simple comparison, but the gap exists even when controlling for various factors. The point is women's work is systematically undervalued. He writes this down carefully. What about dangerous jobs, Do those factor into wage discussions? Men make up 93% of workplace fatalities. Jobs like logging, fishing, roofing, mining, these pay more because of danger premium. Does that affect average wage calculations? Feels slight irritation rising. He's challenging the narrative. The wage gap persists even within same occupations. And we should question why dangerous jobs are male-dominated. That's also a function of patriarchal gender roles. He nods but continues. So patriarchy forces men into dangerous jobs, then pays them more for taking those risks. But that higher pay is evidence of male privilege, even though it comes from higher mortality rate. The logic is uncomfortable when stated that way. You're oversimplifying complex issue. We need to look at full picture of how gender operates. He backs off, but I can tell he has more questions. Last question for today, about male privilege operating invisibly. You mentioned men don't experience gender-based fear in public spaces. Don't worry about walking alone at night the way women do. Standard example I use every semester. That's correct. That's clear example of male privilege. Men move through world without that constant vigilance. He's quiet for a moment, choosing words carefully. Men are 70% of homicide victims, 80% of assault victims, more likely to be attacked by stranger in public. How does that reconcile with idea of male safety privilege? The statistics catch me off guard. Women experience different type of violence. Sexual violence, intimate partner violence. The fear is qualitatively different. He nods, not disagreeing. So both genders experience violence. But we frame women's fear as oppression, and men's actual higher victimization rates as privilege. I'm trying to understand the logical consistency. Getting frustrated now, this is derailing. Daniel, I appreciate your engagement with material, but you seem to be trying to disprove patriarchy exists, rather than understanding how it operates. He closes notebook, maintains respectful demeanor. I'm not trying to disprove anything, professor. I'm trying to understand framework you're presenting. Because my lived experience doesn't match the theory. Here it comes, the personal anecdote to deny systemic analysis. Your individual experience doesn't negate systemic patterns. That's the whole point of understanding privilege. It operates whether you personally feel it or not. He stands up, getting ready to leave. I appreciate your time, Professor Mitchell. I'll think more about what you've said. Leaves politely, but I feel unsettled by conversation. Something about his questions felt different than usual pushback. Not defensive or angry, just genuinely probing for consistency. Next week in class, covering toxic masculinity, explaining how patriarchy harms men too, by forcing them into narrow definitions of manhood, how they're taught to suppress emotions, avoid vulnerability, how this leads to higher suicide rates, substance abuse. Daniel is taking notes as usual, neutral expression. Near end of lecture, I open floor for discussion. Usually women dominate this part, sharing experiences. Daniel raises his hand, first time he's spoken in class. Feel slight dread, but call on him anyway. Yes, Daniel, you have something to add. He stands up, very formal, addresses the whole class. I want to share some context for my questions, so my perspective makes more sense. Oh no, here comes the derailing personal story. I'm 26 years old, returned to school after military service. I enlisted at 18, served 8 years, 3 deployments. Iraq twice, Afghanistan once. The class is silent. This wasn't what anyone expected. I've seen 12 of my friends die, watched 3 of them bleed out. Came home with PTSD. Took 2 years to function enough to enroll here. I'm raising my 6-year-old daughter alone. Her mother left when she was 2. I have full custody. He's not emotional, just stating facts clearly. I work 30 hours a week as mechanic to support us. Take full course load, maintain 3.8 GPA, do all the cooking, cleaning, homework help, bedtime stories. All the emotional labor Professor Mitchell discusses. Can feel a tension of entire class riveted on him. When I was deployed, I made $2,400 a month. To get shot at, to watch friends die, to miss my daughter's birth. While many people here made more working retail, that's the wage gap I experienced. He pauses, making sure everyone is following. When I came home with PTSD, I was told to man up, that I should be strong, that seeking help was weakness. That's the toxic masculinity that almost killed me. I attempted suicide twice before getting help. Some students are visibly uncomfortable now. The VA system failed me repeatedly. Took 18 months to get mental health appointment. Meanwhile, women veterans got priority treatment because system assumed they needed it more. He's not angry, just presenting his experience. When my daughter's mother left, court assumed I was unfit parent. Because I'm male, because I have PTSD, because I'm veteran, I had to spend $15,000. I didn't have to prove I could parent. While she had to prove nothing except that she's the mother. Room is completely silent now. I'm not saying women don't face discrimination. I'm not saying patriarchy doesn't exist. I'm saying the framework we're learning doesn't account for experiences like mine. Looks directly at me now. I've been told I have male privilege my entire life. While being sent to war, while losing friends, while fighting for custody, while raising daughter alone, while working multiple jobs and going to school. His voice is steady, but there's emotion underneath. So when you teach that men benefit from systemic advantages, that we don't face gender-based discrimination, that our privilege operates invisibly to benefit us, I'm trying to understand where my privilege was. The question hangs in the air. Where was it when I was 19 in Fallujah watching my friend die? Where was it in family court trying to keep my daughter? Where was it at the VA being ignored for 2 years? Where was it working myself to exhaustion as single parent? He sits down, done speaking. Every eye in room is on me, waiting for response. Feel completely unprepared for this moment. All my training, all my theory feels inadequate. Daniel, thank you for sharing your experience. That took courage, and I appreciate your vulnerability. He nods but waits for real response. What you've experienced is tragic, and I don't minimize that. But individual trauma doesn't negate systemic analysis. Even as I say it, sounds hollow in context. A female student raises her hand. I call on her gratefully. But professor, isn't that what we tell women? That their individual experiences show systemic patterns. Why is Daniel's experience different? The question is asked genuinely, not confrontationally. Other students nodding, wanting to understand. Because women's experiences collectively show pattern of oppression, while men's experiences show individual hardships within privileged class. Daniel speaks up again without raising hand. How many men need to share experiences like mine before it counts as pattern instead of individual hardship? How many dead veterans? How many single fathers? How many suicides? How many custody battles? Before we acknowledge systemic issues affecting men. Don't have good answer for this. That's worthy discussion, but beyond scope of today's lecture. Let's return to the concept of toxic masculinity. Can feel I'm avoiding his point. Students can feel it too. Rest of class is subdued. Usual energy is gone. After class, several students stay to talk with Daniel, offering support, sharing their own stories. Female students mostly relating to his single-parent struggle. Leave feeling rattled, questioning things I've taught for years. That evening can't stop thinking about his questions. Pull up his enrollment file. Look at his background. Military service confirmed. Honorable discharge decorated. Single-parent status confirmed. Full custody. Work-study approved. 30 hours weekly. Mechanic shop. Academic record is impressive. Dean's list every semester. He's not some men's rights activist trying to disrupt class. He's genuinely trying to reconcile his experience with theory. Next class session, decide to address it directly. Last week, Daniel shared his experience. It raised important questions about how we apply theory. I've been thinking about intersectionality, How different aspects of identity create different experiences. Daniel is listening carefully, as always. Perhaps male privilege operates differently. In contexts of class, military service, single parenthood. Perhaps we need more nuanced understanding. Feel like I'm walking back years of teaching, but can't shake feeling that he's shown gap in framework. Daniel, you've made me reconsider some absolute statements about privilege operating universally regardless of circumstance. I think there's more complexity than I've presented. He nods appreciatively, but raises hand. Professor, I'm not asking you to change your framework, just to include space for experiences that don't fit it. To acknowledge that gender discrimination affects everyone, just in different ways depending on context. That's fair. That's incredibly fair. You're right, and I apologize for presenting theory as if it explained every situation, when clearly it doesn't account for all experiences. Feel vulnerable admitting this in front of students, but also feel like it's necessary for intellectual honesty. Female, student raises hand. Does this mean patriarchy isn't real? No, Daniel answers before I can. It means patriarchy is more complicated than simple male benefit. It means rigid gender roles hurt everyone, just in different ways. He looks at me. Is that fair, Professor? Nod slowly. Yes, that's fair. Rest of semester is different, more open discussion. Students feel permission to question, to complicate, to bring in experiences that don't fit neat categories. Daniel continues to engage thoughtfully, never aggressively, never trying to dominate, just offering perspective that enriches conversation. Other male students start speaking up more, sharing their own experiences with gender expectations, with pressure to perform masculinity, with being dismissed. The class becomes more dynamic, more honest, even though it challenges everything I've taught. End of semester, Daniel comes to office hours again. I wanted to thank you, Professor, for being willing to listen and reconsider. That's rare, especially for tenured professor. Feel embarrassed by his praise. I should thank you. You've taught me something important. About the gap between theory and lived experience. About the danger of absolutist thinking. He smiles for first time I've seen. Can I ask what you'll do differently going forward? Good question. I've been thinking about it. I'll present theory as framework, not as absolute truth. I'll make room for experiences that complicate narrative. I'll acknowledge that gender discrimination is complex and affects people differently based on context. He nods, seems satisfied. That's all I wanted, just space for honesty, for recognition that men suffer too. Not instead of women, but alongside them. That we're all trapped in systems that limit us. Extend my hand, he shakes it. You've made me a better teacher. Thank you. You've made me think harder about my assumptions. That's valuable, even when it's uncomfortable. He leaves and I sit in office thinking. About 15 years of teaching absolute certainty. About how many students I might have failed by not making room for their experiences. Start revising my syllabus for next semester. Adding readings about men's issues, about complexity, about intersectionality applied to all identities, about how rigid gender roles harm everyone. Colleague stops by, sees my revisions. You're including men's rights content now. Is that appropriate for gender studies course? Feel defensive but also certain. It's not men's rights, it's intellectual honesty. It's acknowledging that gender affects everyone. That discrimination is more complex than we've taught. She looks skeptical, but doesn't argue. Word spreads through department about my changes. Some colleagues supportive, others concerned. Department head calls me in for conversation. I've heard you're making significant changes to curriculum based on feedback from one male student. Some faculty are concerned about direction. Straighten my shoulders, prepare to defend it. One student showed me gap in theoretical framework. Gap I should have seen years ago. I'm correcting that, making course more intellectually rigorous. She considers this carefully. Be careful. There's pressure from administration. To maintain certain perspectives in gender studies. Don't want accusations of both sidesism. Understand the political concern, but stand firm. Teaching students to think critically means including complexity, even when that complexity challenges our preferred narratives. That's not both sidesism, that's academic integrity. She nods slowly, neither approving nor forbidding. Just be prepared to defend your choices. Next semester enrollment in my class is higher than ever. Word has spread that it's more balanced, more open. More male students enroll, engagement is better. Discussions are richer, more honest, more challenging. Still teaching feminist theory and gender analysis. But now including voices and experiences I'd excluded. Making room for complexity I'd previously dismissed. The class is better for it. Students are learning more. Not just memorizing theory, but questioning and applying it. TFW male, student challenges your entire framework. TFW, his lived experience contradicts your theory. TFW, you realize you've been teaching incomplete picture. TFW, admitting you're wrong is harder than defending position. TFW1, student teaches you more than you taught them. TFW, intellectual honesty requires changing years of curriculum. TFW, making room for complexity makes course better. TFW veterans' experiences reveal gaps in feminist theory. TFW single father struggles show discrimination is complex. TFW being schooled by student makes you better professor. Still feminist, still believe in gender equality. Still teach about discrimination women face. But now acknowledge men face it too. Just in different contexts, different ways. System of rigid gender roles harms everyone. Some more visibly than others. Some in ways theory doesn't capture. Daniel taught me that with his questions, with his respectful but persistent pushing, with his willingness to share painful experience. Best student I ever had, because he made me better teacher, better scholar, better thinker, by showing me what I've been missing, what I've been excluding from analysis, what I've been too certain to question. That's what education should be. Not indoctrination into single perspective, but honest grappling with complex reality, even when it challenges what we want to believe. Especially then.